Imagine stepping on a high-speed train with no clear map of where it's heading. You know it's the future, it's moving fast, and everybody says you need to get on board. But how do we take control over the journey? That's the reality many business leaders face with AI today. It's no longer a question of if AI will impact your business, it already is. The challenge is now is understanding how to integrate it strategically rather than reactive. I'm Magnus Oxenwaldt, and this is Future Bytes, where we deliver hype-free advice on how AI can transform your business. Today, we're diving into the AI adoption in leadership, right? How modern executives can use AI to drive business value, overcome many things like resistance, and build future-ready organizations. And I have the perfect guest to unpack all this with us. Joining me is Beatrice Silow, an award-winning technology leader who has been recognized as one of Microsoft Power Women in Tech. She has a deep background in digital transformation, AI adoption, and culture-driven leadership. Beatrice, welcome to Future Byte. But before we discuss the strategies and everything that they're interested in, I'd love for you to share a bit about yourself and your journey so that everyone listening can get to know you a bit.
Wow. Thank you for that, Magnus. What a great introduction. I'm so honored. And I'm Beatrice Silow, and I'm a very passionate person who loves to interact and who loves to meet people and also to drive business and drive change. So here's a passion of mine, and I'm the managing director for Columbus in Sweden. And I'm also the CMO for Columbus globally. And I have a long background within IT and tech. I've been in the industry for it's almost 30 years now. So it's been a long
Wow.
time. And I have had many different roles. And it all started way back in time in university, and I had a master's degree in mechanical engineering. And now, 30 years later, I'm into marketing and also the managing director of the company here in Sweden. So it's been a fantastic journey, and I have had so many different roles working at Ericsson, working at Sigma and Nexer. And it has always been one thing that has been the driver in this, and that is meeting people
Meeting people.
and creating relations and being curious of what
Yeah.
is happening, both when it comes to technologies, but also when it comes to relations and meeting people. My big interest and passion is to connect the two and see what that magic brings.
Very well put. Curiosity is basically the driver for future inventions, right? So very good. So let's again, thanks for coming onto the show. I love having you here. So let's get into what we're going to talk about today. So let me start by setting the stage. So Beatrice, many leaders today, if I use the same analogy I used in the beginning, they need to get on board. That's their feeling, right? With AI. But they struggle with where to start. From your experience, what is the biggest misconceptions for leaders to have about AI adoption and then how do we start this journey in a meaningful way?
I think that as with all big changes, I mean, the things happening now, it's a big paradigm shift. And as in the history, you need to, as you said, get on board. You need to not stand and wait. You need to get on board as soon as possible. So I think that you need to be curious. Once again, comes back. You need to be
Yeah.
curious and you need to start, even though you don't have all the strategies in place, you don't have all the knowledge, you don't have all the bits and pieces in place to have control that you might used to have. In this world we live now, it's
Mm,
happening so fast. And I guess it's going to move even faster going forward. So you have to get on board and you can start with the small steps. You don't need to start with the big steps. So you start being curious, start learn, start try, start innovate, experiment, and get gradually understand what it's all about. So I think that we as leaders, we have to inspire, and we also have to make sure that everyone else also gets on board. It's
Mm,
important that we don't leave anyone behind. So for me, this has been a ride that is and fantastic, of course, but it's also been a lot of learnings, and also that you need to let go of the control, that you need to have control. And maybe that has been bigger for me than others. I don't know.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that is one of the things that I have learned, that I need to understand that I cannot be in control of everything.
Everyone is different, right? So it's not like
Everyone is different.
yeah. It's really good advice. So start small, but think strategically and experiment and let the curiosity drive. And by starting small, you won't lose big because you can afford to experiment, right?
Exactly. You can try and no, this was not right. That then I do the other way. So you will not do everything and then find out, oh, it was wrong. You would do it much more incremental. So I think in a way in tech that we have worked with agile for a long
Yeah,
time, that makes it a bit easier, I think, because we are used to that way of thinking if you
yeah.
compare to other industries.
And you
Mhm.
mentioned a good thing there. You mentioned the word tech, and for me, the tech is changing so fast, and you're saying that it's moving really fast. So for leaders, the core question is often not about the technology itself, right? It's about its impact. How do you see AI reshaping leadership and the very foundation of decision making in the next few years, where you need to shift focus more kind of maybe on the impact it has rather than the actual technology that you're going to use?
Yeah. I think that in going forward, of course, everything will be much more data driven. That
Yeah,
is without say, I mean, that is the world we live in right now. And that is something that leaders have to acknowledge and understand how to use.
yeah.
And I also think that we're going to see much more tools to take more enlightened decisions where you have more data to base your decisions upon. But you do not need to have all the technology skills to do that. You need to learn
Mm.
how to use the technology and not the technology itself.
That's
So
so
that,
important, right? That's a mindset difference because tech for it historically it's been very tech, right? The bits and
mm,
pieces and the bits and bytes and
yes.
ones and zeros. But now with your own experience, you led major digital transformation initiatives in the past. What qualities do you think these new leaders will be essential for them to run with this new type of digital transformation change we're seeing going forward with these new technologies?
Of course, knowledge is you need to learn, you need to educate yourself, you need to, or once again, being curious, you need to do that. And you need to learn, like say, with formal
Hmm.
training, but also learn from each other, innovate, experiment, try things. So you need to learn in different ways. And you also need to allow the organization to learn, all the employees to have the time to learn. And also that they, because I also know that not everyone is positive. Even though you and me, we are very positive to
Yeah,
AI and the tech change
absolutely.
and everything that's happening. So for us, it's quite easy just to jump on and try. I remember I tried Jasper when since I'm in marketing, Jasper was one of the first tools that we used way back a long time ago. And it was such a big e- e- experience the first time you did it. But
It was
I
like
did
a
it. It was
aha moment for you. It was you can truly say it was
definitely, definitely.
wow,
It was so cool. And I remember when we did the first press release using Jasper, it was mind blowing how it
wow.
can be done. The quality, not only that, it was a way of being more efficient because obviously you were much more efficient, but
Yeah.
also the quality of it.
But that
So
was you daring to be curious and experimenting. So
yeah,
the practical advice you hear is just get started, experiment, and don't worry about the consequences because this is the way to get started. Is essentially what we're saying.
it is. And as leaders, you need to make that room for it. And you
Yeah.
also need to lead by example. And you need to show everyone, because everyone is not as said as positive as you and me, that this is something that is for everyone. And there has been a lot of research within this. And we might think that people are on board, but it's not. In Sweden, there has been a lot of research, but in Sweden, just a recent published report says that only 27% in Sweden feels motivated to use AI in work.
That's really
7%.
low, isn't it?
It's a
That
low number.
yeah.
And this was a European workforce study for 2025 that was just released. So there's a lot of things going on here that
Yeah.
we need to consider, that not people are different. And as leaders, we need to acknowledge that and make everyone come on board and meet them where they are, take them by the hand and kind of
Yeah.
help them the first steps. And then I'm quite certain that the rest will follow. So this
Yeah,
is something that we need to consider, I think.
yeah, let's hone in on that just a little bit. So,
Uh-huh.
obviously, you've done a lot of initiatives. How do we tackle like resistance, as you mentioned? Because there's a lot of different types of people, and people
Mhm.
has this worry about will I lose my job, or maybe there are cultural barriers and whatever you need to overcome. What is the most effective way to get the buy-in for the AI initiatives and get the let's call it get them on board? Let's do
Mm.
continue analogy, right?
I think that as when there are changes and there are things happening that you are not familiar with, you need to get the trust. You need
Mm,
to understand that this is not something that is dangerous or it's too difficult for me. I can learn like everyone else. So I think you need to create that trust. And you
mm,
also need to show good examples, best success stories where you can show the result. What can this be? What can you learn? What can you do in an inspirational way?
yeah,
But I also think that we need to have like education that is from a with a low threshold, so to say, that it's easy to take in, it's easy to be part of, it's easy, it's both accessible, but also maybe it's a video, maybe it's different ways of learning. So I think that we need to have different types for different persons because you come from different experiences, background. So you need to meet them. So I think it's super good that there's a lot of education trainings out there that you can take, even though you're not a tech person, but still you can get an introduction to AI, what it means, the potential, what I can do, which tools to use, even though I have never studied anything within tech. And
that's a strong statement because then the inclusion is much wider, right? With this this shift in technology,
yeah,
and this inclusion also include everyone and everyone's idea, and I just want to touch on some of the meta areas within this. So we have like ethics, and there's trust, and there's responsible AI. And a lot of people are worried about that. That's one of the first thing that comes to mind. Should every company have like their own AI ethics framework, or is that overkill? Wha- How do we tackle that when we get all those questions from staff and leadership?
I think it's a super interesting question. And I think that you need to have some kind of guidelines in this, some kind of guidance. Maybe you don't need to, make everything for yourself. You can learn from and share, I think, as well. But I think you need to have those guidelines in an organization, as well as you need to have an AI strategy, how to use and how to implement and how to educate and share knowledge. You also need when it comes to ethical matters and how to use AI in a responsible way. So I think those goes hand in hand because I think at least when it comes to generative AI, we need to see it as an assistant, not as a replacement. And we need to define how that assistant should help me in a good way, making sure that we still keep all our values and all our regulations and all those things.
Right? That's
Yeah.
it's key,
It's
and
key.
that is really key. Let's say I'm okay. I'm loving everything I'm hearing, and I'm on board, but I still need to know more. And because you said one of the things you said is knowledge is still key, right? You
Mhm.
need to know these kind of things. Where do I get knowledge about getting on board and steering my journey forward? Where do I find information about the right ethics? Because if I go on internet today, there's such an hype, and everybody's talking about this, right? Who can I trust for the trust? Or who can
Yeah.
I? Who has the right ethics for the ethics?
I wish I had one good answer for that. But I think, as always, you need to work. I mean, there's some regulations now, the AI Act, for instance, that is
Yeah.
within the European Union, and all those things that has been produced that just to cater to all these questions that everyone has. So, of course, there are reports, works, guidelines, regulations that you can use. But I also think that within the company, you need to have because you have your rules as well with your values and the way that your data should be managed and the information specifications and all those things as well. And also what's important to you in your communication, for instance. So I
Yeah.
think that you should look at what's out there, but you should use it wisely and adapt it to your organization and the strategies that you have within your organizations. But I think that there's a lot to learn from what has been done so far, and there has been a lot of good things.
Partnering with somebody who has experience is not a bad idea, because even though experimenting is a great thing, here's a risk to experiment too much, right? With this area of the AI adoption, right? So you don't necessarily need to go in the right direction immediately, but you don't want to go backwards, at least from day one.
No, no. But I think it's a very good with big partnerships, and of course there are some that has done more than others.
Yeah.
And this is a very good time to share things, to support others as well. I think that's an excellent suggestion to do. And when it comes to knowledge and training, there's a lot out there. Um, so
You're
many different
involved in a lot of that, right? You're working with, can tell us about some of the engagements you're involved in.
Yeah, well, of course, there are two, I would say, major passion that I have. One passion is for TechSverige. It's an organization for a members organization for tech companies in Sweden.
Yeah.
So I'm involved in their competence council, and so I'm the chairman of that, working a great deal with tech competence in Sweden, and how can we make sure that we have relevant competence to be a very competitive country with growth and welfare and everything. So that is one area that I'm very much involved in. And I'm also involved in a Microsoft initiative called Innsiktsråd. It's an advisory board for a big knowledge initiative that Microsoft has called AI-lyftet. And that was released like a year ago, and with a very ambitious agenda of educating 250,000 Swedish people
Yeah.
to increase the level of AI knowledge in society. So I think it's a great initiative that do good for the whole society, and especially focusing on those that are not already on board, that might find it more difficult to get on board. And how do you do that? So I
Yeah.
think it's a super good initiative. So I'm very proud to be a part of that in the Innsiktsrådet.
We'll make sure to put some information about that in the description as well for this podcast.
Super good.
Time flies. We're coming to the end, but before we're heading into the end part of this podcast, let's just look into the future and see, what do you daydream about? If we fast forward like 5 years, how do you see AI changing the role for the leadership itself, or any thought around that in the future that would help people design their visions on how to drive leadership?
Yeah, I think that it's super interesting just to think of it. And I think that if we could free up time, I mean, today we are super busy, all of us. I know you are, I am, we all work like crazy.
Yeah.
And if we can free up time for the important things where you can actually work with strategies, you can work with relations, you can work with making people develop at work and really bring out the best. If you can just do that more because of using AI as your assistant
Yeah.
in different ways, I think that we have accomplished something great for
So
all
like
of
an
us.
hybrid existence even. So we
Yes.
work together rather than, yeah, I get that. So for leaders now listening in and want to take action right away, what is the most important practical step here that they should do like next week already if they're not on board? What do you think? If they just do one thing?
One thing, dedicate time in your calendar to explore and being
Yeah.
curious and learn.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. So we've come to the end. We're trying to keep these podcasts fairly short.
Time
So let's
flies so quickly.
it moves so quickly, right? So 20 minutes is a short time. So in this episode, we try to explore how leaders can successfully adopt AI and future-proof their organization, essentially. Some key takeaways, and you can add on here, Beatrice, if I haven't caught all of them. So it's not about if AI will impact your business, right? It's how you're using it. And you said start small but strategic and focus on the real business impact, right? And experiment. That's key, right? Overcoming maybe resistance. I took away the fact that the knowledge and you're using that knowledge to bring clarity to organizations. So AI succeeds perhaps best when leaders communicate its value and not as a threat, rather than just like a driving force, right? We spoke about trust and ethics. They must be like transparent and fair and all that. And but it all altogether needs to be smart business because it's all depending on the business, as you said. And the last thing you said, AI can augment your leadership, right? The key takeaway in the end. Anything to add to that? You
No, but thank you so much. And it's a super interesting topic. And I'm so happy to be part of this exciting times that we are in now. It's fantastic, isn't it?
it is. It's super amazing. It moves so fast. It's crazy fast. Sometimes I never woke up before thinking, what if it just moves a bit slower? I've always asked for faster, right? But this is the first time I truly, because I want to enjoy it while it lasts. All right. So I think let's wrap up. If you want to go deeper and understand more what Beatrice thinks about in her daytime, follow her on LinkedIn. We will put some descriptions in below to get some upcoming insights on leadership and digital transformations. But with that, thanks again, Beatrice, for joining Future Bytes. And also thanks all the listeners for tuning into Future Bytes. So until next time, stay curious, experiment, and lead with AI. Thank you.
Thank you.